Let's talk about me. Hi, welcome to Tea with Rodney. I am so excited to get this episode started, and this is basically an introduction just to get you acquainted with who I am. And it's actually not that interesting. I'm a simple guy. I just grew up in West Africa, Ghana for most of my life. Went through primary school, high school, and fresh out of high school, I came to America. And just to add a little bit of context, growing up in Ghana, my dad is Muslim, so I grew up around Muslim activities. But I myself, I wasn't actually practicing. I kind of did, but it wasn't really seriously to the point where I was devout. I was just kind of going through it. And in addition to that, I actually went to Catholic school, which is kind of weird, right? My dad's reasoning for that was he just wanted us to get a good education. And in Ghana, options are generally limited. And one of the better schools in our area was a Catholic school. So I wound up growing up in a Catholic environment as well. And in the midst of that, I learned a lot of things, because part of the Catholic schools, they teach you about Catholicism. You learn about Jesus, the Virgin Mary, a whole bunch of things. But I found myself a lot more curious about Jesus because Christianity was the predominant religion in my country. But Jesus wasn't a figure that I learned too much about. There were kind of touches of it here and there. So I grew up in middle, primary, and high school. Well, middle and primary, generally just curious about Jesus. But when I got to high school is when I encountered real men who were really on fire for Jesus. And out of their fire, let's just say I caught a little bit of it because they revealed Jesus to me in men, so to speak. Not necessarily because they were doing powerful things, but the way they carried themselves, the kind of conversations we had. And personally, I was always very curious about the Christian faith. So people who were on fire, my curiosity was just a match made in heaven. And that actually worked out for me. And somewhere in high school, I actually gave my life to Christ for the first time. And from that day, I've just been a man full of questions. And every time I encountered anyone who was Christian, I just kept asking question upon question upon question. And I learned a lot that way. But, in Ghana, a lot of the Christian faith is more, I don't want to say experiential. There's obviously some doctrine and there are foundational things that are actually true and correct. But a lot of it was experiential in my experience. So, the kind of answers that I needed, I wasn't really getting because I'm not a very emotional person. So experiences don't inform how I behave. What actually informs me more is how I understand things. I want to understand before I can move on anything. So my questions were being answered, but there was a deep part of that was just dissatisfied. And that's what began my journey in curiosity about the Christian faith, actually studying it for myself. And I'm not claiming to be a super studious, well-learned Christian. No, by no means. I actually have very terrible memory. I have a horrible time remembering verses. I may remember what it says, but I wouldn't remember the chapter and all of that stuff. But I did become a lot more studious about the Word of God, on my own. But it didn't really start in Ghana. It actually started when I came to America because I got access to a few more things like YouTube, internet, and I got opened up to a lot of the Reformed community. And one person, Paul Washer, actually, there's this one specific video, the shocking message that, kind of transformed, I guess, a bunch of college people. And after I watched that video, he talked about Matthew 7, and then he was explaining how Jesus was talking about fruits. Do figs grow on thistles, right? Basically, that kind of plants produce a fruit that the plant isn't off.
You will know them by their fruit. God has the power to change them. Let's imagine for a moment Jesus teaching this passage. And you're sitting out there listening. And he looks at you. He says, thistles. thistles. Do you find thistles on fig trees? And you respond, of course not, Jesus. I mean, you're not an agriculturalist. You're not a farmer. I mean, you're a carpenter. But I mean, everybody knows, Jesus, you don't find thorns on fig trees. Well, then let me ask you another question. Do you find figs, good fruit, on thorn trees? Why, no, Jesus, that's absolutely ludicrous. I mean, you're never going to find thorns on a fig tree, and you're not going to find figs on a thorn tree. Jesus, to say that could be possible, anyone who tells you that, Jesus, you can mark it down. They're either crazy or they're a liar. And then Jesus responds to you, well then, those who call themselves my disciples and bear bad fruit, would not it be the same to say that they were either lying or out of their mind?
Like, why did I never know this? You know, all the people I asked about the Bible, they talked to me in generalities, but getting such detail was just like mind-blowing to me. And that's not to say that, you know, the people before weren't giving me any theological meat, but I was just blown away because it just explained things in a way that I was like, huh. So this Christian thing can be understood with the mind, you know? And for me, it was always like growing up in Ghana, like I said before, it was just experience, and seeing the charismatic side of the Christian faith, you know, moving in power, word of knowledge, things like that. And maybe at some point you have conversations specifically about these things, but you know, for today, just to bring context to, you know, where my upbringing and why I'm here today is, we just leave it at that. Okay, so I was exposed more to the charismatic side of things, and coming to America, I was exposed to the Reformed community. So now my faith wasn't just, you know, what I quote unquote believed, but, you know, in starting to be more studious about the Word of God, reading the Bible for myself, I became more founded in truth and knowledge, you know, not just vibes, but like actual truth. Like I had a reason for what I believed. It wasn't just because, quote unquote, someone told me, but I read the Bible for myself. I listened to people who talked about some historical things that actually blessed me in many different ways. And that's how I wound up here, basically, you know. And the Bible has just been a big part of my life. Like literally, I don't go a day without reading my Bible. I actually have a much easier time reading my Bible than you ever find me praying. That's not to say I don't, but it's just a lot easier for me because just learning about this immense, inexhaustible depth of wisdom and knowledge, and every single time I read it, I just continue to be more and more overwhelmed. And out of that experience, out of that growth and learning, actually quite recently, I was just reading my Bible and I was just so mind blown by a new thing that I learned, and I couldn't help but want to tell someone, you know, and that desire is in itself why I'm here today, why this page exists, and I'm excited to go on this journey with you guys, you know, just to, you know, add to all of this. I haven't been to seminary school, so I'm by no means, a divinity expert, so to speak. I don't have a bachelor's in divinity or anything like that. I'm just a man who reads the word and believe it for how I understand it. And then I try to be a little bit more diligent to learn things that I don't quite understand, and I'll present it to you as clearly as I understand it. And if there are any questions, hopefully, you know, as I make more and more on this, you know, I'll be correcting myself. So this is really a journey that I just want to share with everyone. I don't necessarily have an audience in mind. I just want to share what the Bible is teaching me. And I think that in itself can be fruitful. So I don't want to talk too much. I think I've said enough about myself and why this page exists. I just pray that, you know, you take this in stride. You're blessed by what comes with his teaching. If you see any errors, please approach it with grace, understanding that, I'm not a perfect man. I mean, I'll try to correct myself as much as I can, but let's discuss, let's talk, let's learn from each other. And hopefully this page will exist to be fruitful for both you and me. Thank you for joining me today, and look forward to the next episode. And what do you think it's going to be about? See you next time.